All right, guys, good afternoon. February 13th, episode 44 of Three Things Within. Before we get going, hopefully I'll cough a little less today. 95 views as I'm recording this for yesterday's episode. Thank you. That's awesome. Almost a century mark. I would like to think that next May, next June, next July, I'll look back and 95 views will be a drop in the bucket. But for right now, that's excellent progress. Thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you taking the time out of your busy schedule to spend some time with me. Today's episode, let's dive in. The first thing that I want to share with you is something a dear friend of mine, brought to my attention last year. In terms of goal making and resolutions, I lived a life where I was very invested, very involved in making a very detailed list of all these challenges and all these resolutions and financial goals and reading goals and fitness goals. And it was a lot. And it was good. It got me to do things I would never have done. But last year, my buddy introduced me to, it's called Misogi, M-I-S-O-G-I. It's a Japanese Shinto ritual. It initially involved purification, washing the body in cold water. But now, it kind of refers to a modern challenge that involves pushing oneself to the limit. And so, this is a very Japanese mentality, but it's basically thinking of a challenge for the year, for the goal. A challenge that you may very well fail at, right? A challenge, something, an obstacle, a goal that is 50% or more likely not to succeed. A challenge that pushes you to its limits, forces you to confront your fears and doubts and weaknesses, right? A personal development and transformational approach. So I kind of shifted my viewpoints, and every year I kind of create a Misogi, a challenge that kind of pervades and I try to embody it throughout the year. It often involves a physical or mental challenge. That's kind of, if you Google it, that's kind of what you're going to get. So last year I had a challenge. I was going to do a marathon. I've done marathons before, but they're always so difficult for me. It's a combination of not training up to my ability, just hitting a barrier versus in terms of time, and it's very hard for me. But I still do them. I'm not good at them, and I was very sick before my last marathon last November in Indianapolis, and I looked at just finishing the race as sort of my Misogi, as sort of my challenge for myself, right? And what I have found is that persevering through discomfort and uncertainty is an exceptionally important trait. I am not the most gifted indoor cyclist, Peloton enthusiast, if you will, but I will tell you what, I have an incredibly high tolerance for discomfort. Sometimes I'll do a 45-minute ride where after 2 minutes I will crank that and I will just sit and sort of steep in sort of this really hard resistance and just churn and just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. I know you hear about it all the time from celebrities, from life coaches, but I think there is some importance, and you can take this to the extreme, right? I don't recommend doing those kind of rides all the time because they don't serve an ultimate purpose for fitness, but I do think it's helping to embrace things that you had aversions to and helping redefine what's possible for you. I'm not one of those people that thinks that anybody can do everything, right? There are some things that are just really hard and they dog at you and they take over your brain, right? So I would like all of us collectively to think about when we make a challenge that you may not succeed. There was a part of me that didn't think that I would finish the marathon. I just wouldn't be able to do it, right? And that would be okay, because the Misogi challenge is something that you may not succeed at, right? A lot of times we create goals, little checklist things that we just flip through, right? And those are good, and that helps build a warrior mentality to some degree. But I thought about this, and I still think about it all the time. And I think that it's important to create a challenge that's so difficult that it may take the entire year just to be comfortable to do it, to try it, right? So anyway, that's my challenge for you. Misogi. Originally, it was a Japanese Shinto ritual that involved literally bathing oneself, sitting under cold water under a waterfall. So anyway, that's my number one thing. My number two thing is, and I don't want to. I don't like talking about recent events and news. It's very disheartening for me as somebody that leads with kindness and empathy. But I will talk about pennies briefly. I was thinking to myself on the drive in today, why do we make pennies? And the biggest reason is because most of them don't remain in circulation. We just get pennies and we hold on to them. We hoard them. We put them in piggy banks, which was the previous topic. Or we just hang on to them. I have only, my son likes to buy gum at the gas station. We use pennies for that occasionally. Save that, I don't know the last time I carried around a penny. They're in all our cars. They're in all our couches. So part of the problem that we're having is that we keep making pennies, which cost 3 cents. Everyone knows that. Well, we do now. It seems a little high for something worth 1 cent, but it's because we don't use them. They don't remain in circulation, right? And the other part about this story that I thought was interesting is if we don't make pennies, which I'm not advocating that we stop making pennies, we'll have to make more nickels, right? The demand for nickels will increase. It'll double, and those are more expensive. So this is kind of just one of these things that there are better problems to tackle. I think it's kind of a fun little mental exercise, but people, start using your pennies. Get them out there. Then we won't have this problem. And if we don't make pennies, we'll have to make nickels. We don't make nickels, we'll have to make dimes, right? We need some amount of coin currency, all right? There's movements to be cashless. All that stuff's good and dandy, but for the right now, in 2025, let's keep making everything. But I thought it was a cool little story. So, anyway, that's my number 2 thing. And excuse me while I look at my notes sheet, because amazingly, keeping 3 things in your head at one time is difficult. Oh, okay. Let's talk about Pizza Hut for a second. Pizza Hut was, for me, the peak of going to, I guess, a restaurant. It's a restaurant. It's a hut. It's the peak of it, man. When I think about childhood nostalgia and food, I think Pizza Hut. The iconic building, right? The weirdly opaque red glasses that you got your soda in. The personal pan pizza that was literally so piping hot. It was essentially like the middle of the sun warm, right? You put the table, it would go on the table and it would radiate heat. You'd have to back up just to be next to it, right? I think of the Book It program where you got a little candle, right? They had those little embers and you would fill in the embers of the candles and you would get free stuff. Everything about Pizza Hut is just so comforting to me to think about. And you can drive by the old Pizza Huts and you can see them being converted into like burrito shacks and just different things. And it's fun just to kind of sit and just kind of like spend a few minutes thinking about a time that was just, we were a proper country, man. This was peak living, I tell you. They had, on half days, I would go to the buffet. They had a pizza buffet. And my God, you could just gorge yourself. You just sat and you just kept going. You got a little bit of salad just to say you got salad if someone asked. They had the dessert pizza. They had everything going for it. It was probably like $10 too. Buffets are kind of disgusting. I get that. The whole gluttony of a buffet. But when you're a kid, nothing beats the idea of just endless variety, even though after 4 pieces you were done. So you probably didn't even eat even any more than you would when you normally got a meal, right? Just everything about the Pizza Hut experience, I think about it. I mean, it's a shell of what it was. So that's a trip down memory lane for me. Love to hear about your experience with, like, what is a restaurant? What is a comfort food? What is a memory about going to a place? It's so exciting when you go somewhere as a kid, right? I mean, part of the fun is that you're not in control. You're just the passenger along for the ride. You don't have to worry about the traffic and the red lights and the driving. You're passively sitting there and you're kind of just awaiting it, and it kind of builds momentum, and you can kind of picture the menu and what you're gonna get, and it's just all these good feelings. So I think there's never a bad time to think about a good feeling. And for me, in the 90s, going to Pizza Hut, that was the ultimate, right? So anyway, I'm gonna leave you with these 3 things today, all over the map, of course. That's the brilliance of this episode, right? In this programming. The Japanese goal making. Think about that. Give yourself a goal that you very well may not succeed in, but think of how far you will grow as a person in just getting ready to tackle that obstacle, that physical challenge, right? It doesn't have to be a marathon. A marathon is a darn difficult thing. I've yet to do it well. I'm doing a half marathon coming up, and I haven't even barely trained for it. So that's not going to be my Misogi for this year. And then the penny. Use those pennies. Part of the problem is we just don't use the thing, and then more have to be made, and they're more expensive and more expensive every darn year. And then lastly, the Pizza Hut buffet. There are very few things that bring me a bigger smile to my face than just those personal pan pizzas with that beautifully caramelized crust. Pizza Hut knows that butter on that crust. There's something to be said about that. And this experience predates the stuffed crust, which I do like as an adult. But I'm old enough where there wasn't even stuffed crust, man. So anyway, those are my 3 things with Ian. Be good to yourselves, okay? Stay true to who you are. Don't let this crazy world manipulate you and change you. And I will see you tomorrow. I will be here every day. That's a guarantee. Take care, guys. Bye.